Hi everyone. Welcome back to Unite Pieces channel. Today we are going to tell you about a drama, action, adventure movie, titled The Book of Eli. The Book of Eli tells the story of 30 years after the nuclear disaster, making the condition of the world and human morals worse. To save human civilization, Eli has a special mission to walk across the American desert, and will deliver a holy book to the west coast of the United States. So, make sure you watch this video till the end, for a better experience. The movie opens with the conditions after the war. It looks like the world has been destroyed. The scene switches and shows a terrible forest, many corpses lying there. Then we are directed to the main actor of this film, Eli, who is trying to shoot an animal for his dinner. After that, Eli walked down the arid desert, walking in the middle of destroyed cars. Eli then headed to a house that seemed no longer inhabited. There Eli immediately checked the situation to ensure its safety. Suddenly when he opened the door there was a dead man hanging, either murdered or committed suicide. Eli then took the man's shoes. It seemed that Eli really liked him. Night fell. Eli finally rested in that place with full of silence and loneliness. Eli cooked the results of his hunt while listening to songs through his iPod. Eli also cleaned his weapon. It was revealed that at that time water was a very rare object. Even for bathing Eli used a kind of rag. Before going to bed, Eli took the time to read his Bible. It could be said that Eli was a religious person. The next day, Eli continued his journey, and at that time saw a woman falling and looking confused. When Eli approached, he realized that the woman was just a bait, and sure enough, it turned out that a group of robbers appeared to ask Eli to give his belongings. Eli of course refused and said, if they had to stop and leave. But they attacked Eli instead, so Eli cut off the man's hand as fast as lightning. After that Eli alone fought the robbers, and amazingly Eli could win. After that Eli continued his journey. At that time Eli again saw two people who were being robbed by a group of motorcycle gangs. His heart became indecisive, between wanting to save the two people or leave it alone. But Eli remained firm to avoid all existing problems and focus on his goal. Finally, Eli undid his intention to save the person. Eli continued his journey, and arrived in a city, where the conditions were also bad. Eli then entered a shop, but he was immediately pointed at with a gun, because the shopkeeper had never seen Eli before. Then the shopkeeper told Eli to show his hand, after which Eli replied, I'm not part of them. Eli came to this shop with the intention of charging his battery. Then Eli saw that the motorcycle gang that killed the two people before, turned out to be in this city too. The scene changes and shows someone reading a book, the man named Carnage. The man who has power in the area, and is a person who really likes books. Back to Eli, who asked the shopkeeper if the place across the street had water. The shopkeeper replied that there was, but Eli had to pay dearly. Eli then entered the place and bought water. Water itself is a very rare and expensive item, so Eli had to pay a very high price. Suddenly, a cat disturbed him and Eli immediately chased him away. Then the shopkeeper called Solara, who was the daughter of Carnage. Solara was asked to fill Eli's water. Suddenly, the leader of the motorcycle gang who happened to be there, did not accept Eli's actions pushing his cat, but because he felt the problem was trivial, Eli certainly did not respond and even apologized. However, the man seemed to just want to find trouble with Eli, until suddenly Eli slammed the man's head and instantly killed him. Gang members are certainly angry with Eli, and Eli who can no longer avoid. Finally, Eli was forced to fight them all. Eli stopped after Solara stopped the action. Then Carnage called Eli after hearing the chaos, and said who Eli really was and what his purpose was. Eli replied that he wanted to go west. Carnage said that there was nothing there, then offered Eli to become his men, but Eli refused. Hearing that, Carnage asked Eli to stay one night at his place, to think about his answer. Eli stayed at the place that night, and soon Solara came to his room. It turned out that Solara was told by Carnage to serve Eli. But Eli refused, because he was not that kind of person. Solara then said that Eli had to let her sleep there, because if not then Carnage would torture her mother. Hearing that, Eli finally allowed Solara to be there. Solara was then curious about the book that Eli brought, but Eli refused to tell her. That night Solara was taught the correct way to eat, which is by praying first. Finally Solara learned that Eli was a good person, and different from the people she had met so far. The next day Solars returned and met her mother. then taught her mother how to pray exactly like what Eli taught her. Seeing that, of course, Carnage was immediately curious about what Eli had taught Solara, asking it by torturing Solara's mother. Finally, Solara said that Eli read a book with a sign of the cross on the cover. Hearing that, Carnage was immediately happy, because it was the Bible that he had been looking for. Carnage intends to ask for the book, but when he will look for Eli in his room, it turns out that Eli has left. Eli was already in the store, and was preparing to leave after taking his supplies. But when he came out of the store, Carnage and his men had confronted Eli, and forced him to hand over the Bible he was carrying. However, Eli refused and left. Carnage just chuckled at that, and immediately ordered his men to shoot. But to their surprise, because the bullet he fired did not hit Eli. Then all of Carnage's men immediately shot at him together, but quickly Eli killed them all, even wounding Carnage's leg. Before leaving, Eli confronted Red Ridge, Cannett's men, who looked hesitant when he was about to open fire, and finally decided to let Eli go. Eli then continued his journey. At the beginning of the journey, it turned out that Solara quietly went with him, because according to his mother he would be safer if he was with Eli. Eli actually refused, but Solara made an offer, which would tell the secret water source of Carnage, and Eli agreed. Arriving at the location, they take water for supplies, but after taking water, Eli turns out to lock Solara in it, and says the road is not a safe place for him. On the other hand, Carnage, who is being treated, still holds his ambition to have Bible, then asks all his men to chase Eli to the west. Elsewhere, Solara, who has been able to get out, finds a woman asking for help, and with her innocence Solara goes forward to help the woman, and as we might expect, it turns out that the woman is just a trap. Two men immediately grabbed her and wanted to rape her, but soon an arrow pierced the man's chest, and the second man also met the same fate. It turns out that Eli came and saved Solara. Because Solara was stubborn, they finally continued their journey together. Mary's night arrived. Eli and Solara decided to spend the night in a former unused chimney. There Solara, who was increasingly curious about the Bible, asked Eli to read it. Solara was impressed by the contents of the Bible, which was very soothing to her soul. Eli also told her how he found the Bible. One day, Eli heard a voice that came from nowhere. The voice seemed to come from his heart, saying that he had to save the Bible from destruction, and take it westward. The voice also said that Eli would be protected along the way. That's why Eli persisted in walking west even for 30 years. Suddenly they realized that Carnage might be close, so they hurriedly left. Eli and Solara found a house in the middle of the desert. Even though they were suspicious of the house, they finally went there. Maybe there was still water or food. However, when they were about to enter the house, suddenly there was a trap. It turned out because the house was inhabited by an old couple. But because they saw Eli and Solara were not bad people, they let them in. There we see that the old man's hands are shaking. Solara, who feels something is wrong, then asks about it. After that, they were invited to the backyard of his house. It turned out that the two people had buried and eaten humans, the cause of their hands shaking because they ate too much human flesh. Eli hurriedly prepared to leave, but when he was about to go out, Carnage had already arrived there, so Eli and Solara decided to go back in for cover. Carnage then asked Eli to hand over his book along with Solara, but Eli seemed to be resisting, and asked if the two old men had any more weapons. To their surprise, they find out that the old man keeps a lot of weapons in his chair. After that, Solara throws a bomb at Carnage, as a sign that they will fight back. So after that, there is a great firefight, but because Carnage's equipment is superior, they then destroy the house, and corner Eli. Finally, Eli surrendered, but Eli still wouldn't give them the Bible. But when Carnage tortured Solara, Eli had no choice and was forced to hand over the Bible. When he got it, Carnage suddenly shot Eli. Eli still tried to stand up, and trusted her belief that she would be protected. Here Carnage says that Eli is just an ordinary person, and it's true. Eli eventually falls and surrenders, but not with his heart and faith. Finally, Carnage leaves Eli and takes Solara. On the way, Solara decides to fight back, and entangles the neck of Carnage's men, so that the car flips over. Things got chaotic, after the grenade that Solara was carrying, was thrown to destroy the other Carnage's men's car. Solara finally escaped using the remaining car, while the Carnage who no longer had fuel was forced to return to the city. After arriving at the location where Eli was lying, Solara was surprised because Eli was no longer there. When Solara walked down the road, she finally found Elu walking with a limp. After that, Solara took Eli to what she believed to be her final destination, which was west. Solara said what made Eli willing to give up the Bible, even though it was very important to her. Eli replied that it had been with her for years, and Eli had memorized it. In another location, Carnage apparently did not realize that the Bible was locked, and no one could open it. Back to Eli and Solara, they finally reach their final destination. They walk over a bridge that has been broken, then head to an island. On the other hand, Carnage finally reaches the city. Because he can't open it, Carnage calls a locksmith to solve it. Back to Eli and Solara, they head to the island, which turns out there are people guarding it, which means that the place is inhabited by humans. They enter there, and it turns out that the contents of the place are a giant library, which stores copies of books that have survived the Great War that hit the world. Eli meets the head of the library, and finally says he wants to give the Bible. Hearing that, the head of the library is surprised, and asks where the Bible is. Elsewhere, Carnage finally manages to open the Bible. Here he is surprised by the fact that the Bible uses Braille, which turns out that all this time Eli was a blind man. Eli walked west for years, relying only on his faith. That's when we see Eli asks the head of the library to provide a lot of paper, and Eli begins to read the words of God that he has memorized over the years. Over the years, Eli gets older, but still reads the word as it is written by the head of the library. Finally, Eli completes the task from God that has been entrusted to him. At the end of the film, Eli dies in a peaceful place. After visiting Eli's grave, Solara, who is more trained, decides to continue her wandering journey, and the film ends. From this movie we can take away the value that Eli was a person of great faith and had an unbreakable belief. Even though his body gave up, his body and soul still held fast to his beliefs. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and see you tomorrow.